and give a presentation. We're going to talk for about an hour, short hour, then we'll have a break, and then after the break we'll have time for Q&A. So if you have anything, please do, don't hesitate, and do prepare some of the questions to a major specialist in the field. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor, very much. Very happy to be here. Thanks for listening to me. And please, I am open afterwards to any question and any comment you may have, either here or outside in a coffee, as he said. So I would like to show you today one of the cases that is perhaps more well known, that is the Argentinian case. However, I am not very sure whether to call this transitional justice. This is a big discussion in Argentina, whether it is transitional justice or it is not. It is just criminal justice. The good thing for a cause as this one is that we have had all the situations possibly thought of in Argentina. Since our last dictatorship, we've been through so many things. Now we are going to talk about that. I think we have used every single tool from this toolbox of the justice, of transitional justice. We have used all of them. And now finally, after so many years, we are judging. We are judging according to criminal law. So this is like a mixture of transitional justice and criminal traditional justice. Catherine Sicking, you may know her, took our case as a big example in order to write her dissertation. But after some years, some other scholars said, is this transitional justice? So we can talk about that. First of all, I would like to put you into the facts, let's say. I believe the group that had this case before has talked about this, but you know, or you may know, that in Argentina we had many dictatorships, but the last one, the one from 1976 to 1983, was a very special one. And this is the one I am going to talk about. We have not had any other afterwards. This was the last one. And the facts that occurred during this period were terribly, terribly cruel, and crimes against humanity were very, very rare at that time as a concept, but now our judges are judging these crimes as such. So this last dictatorship was a group of military people that took power illegally on March the 24th, of 1976. This was the first Junta Militar, that's the name, and this first group was in charge of the government. During their regime or dictatorship, there were many, many crimes committed because it was a system that was organized in this way. This is what we first have to have in mind. They were not isolated crimes. Of course, this was a huge methodologically planned and organized system of human rights, grave and massive violations. So the first idea of this group from the right-hand side, let's say the right wing of politics, was to persecute everybody belonging to the left wing of politics, or with any idea that could confront their ideas. So this could be students, professors, writers, intellectuals in general, and political people involved in politics. The main means was persecution. So they constantly persecuted people with different ideas. The second means, very, very important, was censorship. No books, no articles, no writings were allowed, no music. We had in Argentina, we have a very interesting period of music that comes at this time. Everything was censored. The restriction of liberties, of course, of every kind, not only liberty of movement. You could not go to the street at any time. There was what is called toque de queda. There were hours at which you could be in the street, and you couldn't stay standing. You had to move. You had to go somewhere. And of course, there was a restriction of other kinds of liberty, no? Liberty of expression, liberty of thought, liberty of many other kinds. Forced displacement was a very interesting topic. Many people were forced or felt forced to be displaced, so they moved from Argentina. They knew they were going to be persecuted, so they moved in advance. We are talking about the 70s, where this concept was not very, very common. Now everybody talks about displaced people, migration. It was not at that time. So many people went to Europe, from Argentina, first to Uruguay or Brazil, but the situation in Latin America was a bit of a mixture of military regime, so it was not so safe, so they went to Europe. Why Europe? Because we come from Europe. A lot of people in Argentina, I am Italian actually, so a lot of people from Argentina come from Italy or Spain or France or Germany after or during the Second World War. So many people went back to their countries. Many people went to France and to Spain in particular, but mainly France. This is a very important country, and we are going to talk about that later. So, forced displacement, everybody had to leave everything, house, school, studies, work, and everybody who was, those people who were detained, of course illegally detained or arbitrarily detained, they did not get a due process of law. The judicial power existed, it was still on, but they didn't go through the regular channels, let's say. We had habeas corpus, that is when you petition a judge in order to know where a person is, or if it's being tortured, so to have a solution for that. There were habeas corpus, but they were not resolved or solved in a correct way, let's say, in general. There were some exceptions. So illegal detention and kidnapping was regular. Every day you could see in the streets illegal detentions and kidnapping. Of course, the detention conditions were terrible. There was a lot of robbery and fraud also. Why? Because when people were detained at their houses, when the military came to the house to kidnap the people there, the house was robbed, and they took everything that could be of value, and then they did something with that. We could see that later. And there's also fraud. There was also fraud because the properties, I mean the houses and apartments of the people were also robbed in a way. They said they mounted this kind of notary office where they, under pressure, got the signature of the people that was detained, and they kept their houses. Torture and ill treatment, inhuman treatment was, of course, used in every center or illegal center of detention, torture, and extermination. We call them campo o centro clandestino de detención. These are illegal centers. When people were detained, they were tortured in order to obtain from them more information to keep the persecution going, no? To have that information about new people who could be detained as well. Sexual violence and rape was one of the most terrible crimes committed during detention. There was a nice case law evolution in this, because at the beginning sexual violence and rape were not judged as independent crimes. They were considered a form of torture. After many, many years, I mean many years, like the first sentence was 2010, and we are talking about crimes of 1976. So after many, many years, we got the first sentences in criminal trials condemning rape and sexual violence as such, as diversity, in a distinction from torture. Of course, there was discrimination. There was even discrimination against Jews. There is a connection there between the German Nazi government at that time and our military people in Argentina. Many military people were instructed under German Nazi manuals of militaries. So there was discrimination against Jews and other particular groups. There was this crime of abduction of children. You know that people that were, children that were born in captivity, in custody, were taken from their biological mothers and they were delivered to police families or military families. At the ESMA, that is a very important center of detention that is in the middle of the capital city. We were there both with Professor Stefan and with Laura together, the three of us. At that center only, more than 30 kids were born illegally, of course they are, and they were sent to different families. Only one was given to the biological family. Then we had, of course, homicides, executions in the streets, forced disappearance. We have 30,000 people that were disappeared, and we have this special and terrible method used that is called vuelos de la muerte, or death flights. People from the detention centers were dragged and put into planes. They were taken to the river and they were thrown into the waters, even alive, with their clothes on. They were found, their corpses were found at the shores of different, of the two countries, Argentina and Uruguay, which is right in front of us. And finally, there was a war during our dictatorship in 1982, that is Malvinas War, or Falklands War, as you may know it. The Malvinas War was in the middle, or at the last, let's say, period of the dictatorship, because we wanted to recover the Malvinas that were at that time in power of English people, English government. And this was like a tool the military used in order to get a good image or try to convince Argentinian people that they were doing something good for the country. Of course, we lost the war, and it was a terrible war. More than 3 times the soldiers of England we lost from the Argentinian side. So here you can see how the tensions were. This is in the streets, everyday life, military in the street, really armed and with these weapons, and they detained people that they thought were suspicious. In, of course, cruel ways, arbitrary ways, in violation of their human rights, of course, and even in an appearance of a legal way, because these are people from the federal police, the legal police in Argentina, and they are taking people in their trucks. So this is in appearance of a legal detention, but of course the method is totally in violation of human rights. This is an example of the death flights that I told you. This is the plane, the Skyvan, the plane that was used to throw people into the river. This plane was lately, like 1 month ago, remember the period of time, no? Right? 1 month ago, we recovered this plane. It was in the United States. And we recovered it and we put it in front of the museum ESMA. It's there right now. This was a very long diplomatic claim, and finally we could do this, to have this as a piece of memory at the museum. This is one of the pictures of one of the corpses found in the shores of the river of a person that was thrown from that plane. And this is a very new book by a survivor, Miriam Leuven. She's a journalist in Argentina. She stayed in the ESMA, and she, by chance, by fortune, didn't go into the flights. The flights were every Wednesday, so if a Wednesday a guard came to you that were detained at the ESMA, at the center of detention, and he told you, okay, today you are going to be transferred, that meant you were going to the flight. And she, by different reasons, was always away from this lack, let's say, and she survived. So afterwards, she survived the ESMA itself, and she wrote this book on the flights. This is the main square in Argentina in front of the Pink House, that is the government's place, let's say. And the people walking around this pyramid, that is the main monument in the square, are many people, in general, from different origins and all that, but there is a group that's called Mothers of Plaza de Mayo, May Square, and Grandmothers of May Square, Abuelas de Plaza de Mayo. These are two different groups that were looking for their children. Their children had been kidnapped and disappeared, but their daughters were pregnant, so they knew that their children were not going to be found, but at least they wanted to know about the born child. So that's why they call first themselves mothers, then grandmothers, and they kept, in the past, they don't do it anymore, they kept walking around the pyramid asking for that. They could not stop, because if you stopped, you were detained. So they kept moving and moving. And they started wearing this white handkerchief on the head that you may have seen. So this is a demonstration. From that time, you can see the fashion or the kind of shoes they wear. It's an old picture. The first sign there says where they are, the hundreds of babies born in custody, and it's signed underneath Abuelas de Plaza de Mayo, and then at the back you can see here on the left Madres de Plaza de Mayo. So these are the two organizations that looked for their children and grandchildren. So this is like a very short summary of the facts of the crimes committed. In 1983, legal and free elections were called. So the military themselves realized that they could not go on. The economic situation was terribly bad, and the crimes committed were too notorious, and here comes the help of many countries. France in particular, as I told you, many people were displaced to France, for instance. People in these countries, France, Spain, a little Italy, but mainly France, started complaining internationally. So there was this big international pressure so that the government in Argentina stopped committing these crimes and called for new elections. So they had a very good or important part in the history of our country. Actually, due to the claims in France in particular and some other countries from people that were exiled there, the Inter-American Commission of Human Rights came to Argentina in the middle of the dictatorship. It made a visit even to the ESMA, to this center of detention. They visited the ESMA and other places, and they checked the situation. they realized which the situation was and produced a very important report afterwards. So thanks to the visit of the Inter-American Commission of Human Rights, thanks to the pressure of countries such as France in particular, and many other human rights organizations, and the mothers and grandmothers of Plaza de Mayo, we finally, or the military finally said, okay, we have to leave, we cannot conduct the country anymore. So they called for elections and the new president was elected, Raúl Alfonsín. And now we have the beginning of this transitional justice or criminal justice, you can decide. But there were two main measures. So as soon as we have our first democratic president, 1983, we have December 1983, we had two very important decrees. First is to conform a truth commission. Second, to have a criminal trial for all the perpetrators, or the main perpetrators. As to the truth commission, I guess you may know, CONADEP, Comisión Nacional de Desaparición de Personas. At that time, we were not talking about forced disappearance, we were talking about disappearance. The concept was not internationally set yet. So that's the reason of this name. This is a truth commission, as you may have studied already, and it was integrated by very important people in Argentina, not lawyers. They were mainly professors, people from other sciences, as sociology, for example. We had a very well-known and respected journalist, a writer. The name was Sabato, the president and director of this commission, who was a very important writer in Argentina. So this commission was for a short period, from December 83 to September 84, and they visited more than 300 centers of detention. And they heard more than 1,000 complaints, and they took 7,000 cases. So this was a huge work, and everything resulted in this famous report that you may know, Nunca Más. It's a report from this commission, and this is a phrase that was used later on in many other reports of different commissions. It means never again, or no more. So finally, when the period ended, the president of the commission, that is the guy with the man with the glasses, the man wearing glasses, Ernesto Sabato, delivered Alfonsín, the president, this report. The second measure of transitional justice was sending the military people to trial. And this is a big process that we have to go step by step because it's really complicated. It's not that they just had this decree by the president and the trial started, not at all. First of all, before leaving the government, the illegal government, the military people approved an amnesty act for themselves. So before leaving, they said, okay, everything that we committed is forgiven. Amnesty, total amnesty. Of course, that was an illegal act. So one of the first things after democracy was recovered was to abrogate that law. So no more amnesty, we can judge. But the thing was that these were acts committed by military people. So they had to reform the military justice code, and the trials that were held under the military code were going to be reviewed by the federal chamber, I mean the traditional justice. So the justice of the military was going to be reviewed by our justice, the general justice. And when they did that, because at the beginning they said, okay, let's leave them and leave them so that they can try themselves. But of course, the process was not fair, there was no due process, in the name of the victims, I mean, and they were too delayed. So finally, there was like a commitment. In 30 days, you have to comply and give us a report on the situation. If that report says that the trials under the military code are not good, we are going to take part. We are going to be in charge of the trials, and that's what happened. So after this first chance for the military to try themselves, the criminal justice took power and started this very famous process called 1384. This is the final trial that we will have. Maybe you know the movie, Argentina 1985. So this was the first process that started in 1984, and in 1985 we had the trial. That's why the movie is called like that, because the trial was that year. It was a trial of 4 months. It was terribly fast. There were many testimonies to be heard, so much evidence to be produced, so it was a very exhausting trial where we judged the main commanders of the military government. But you can imagine, to listen to 800 witnesses, it was more than 900 hours of hearings. Defenders and even the district attorney, they slept, they fell asleep during the trials, because it was humanly impossible to hear so many testimonies. So finally, after the 4 months, we got the sentence in 1985, December 1985. According to this sentence, the main responsible perpetrators were condemned. Videla and Macera, who were the two, like the most important ones of the regime, were condemned to life sentence. Viola, 17 years of imprisonment, and some others. And there were even acquittals. So this is interesting because there was a process of law, there was a due process of law. These are the two main ones who were condemned to life sentence, Videla and Macera. They are both dead at the moment. So what happened next? Because till now, till 1985, with this trial and sentence, 1986, the Supreme Court of Justice makes some changes to the sentence. I do not want to go deep, but here there are very interesting criminal law issues we may discuss later. The problem was, of course, how to make liable to the commander when he did nothing. He just gave the order. He did everything, but according to the contacts, let's say, it was not him, but the subordinated people were the ones that committed the crimes. So there was a good criminal issue there. Klaus Roxin, prepared a whole theory before, in 1861, for the Eichmann trial in Jerusalem, and we applied for the first time. Argentina was the first country to apply the doctrine of Roxin in a local process. So that's very interesting, but we will not go into that. So what happened next? And this is where the story starts to be a little complicated. There was an order to go on judging. So we have now the main commanders judged and in jail. But now the thing was, okay, let's go on. Let's go on judging everybody in the chain of command. And at that time, there was a revolt. Many military people went back to weapons, let's say, and they started complaining. If they continued judging, they were going to power again. So there was this law that's called Ley de Punto Final. You can see right there. I left it in Spanish on purpose. It is like a final stop. So no more trials. We had a period of 6 months, which is nothing, 6 months, and that's the last possibility to judge. Every military or police that was not charged at that time was free of charge. After that, there was another rebellion prepared by this person. He's called Aldo Rico, who's now a politician, actually. And it was a rebellion called Levantamiento Cara Pintada. Cara Pintada means with the face painted, because they painted their faces. So they made this small revolution in Campo de Mayo in Easter 1987, again trying to stop the trials. So Alfonsín, in a negotiation with these military people, approved by Congress, but they approved the law of a superior order. That's called Ley de Obediencia Debida. This means the superior order that if the person, the military or police, is complying with an order given by a superior, he is not responsible. The superior is responsible because he's acting as he should act. Well, this is in our criminal code, but you have to prove that. You have to prove that you didn't know it was criminal, that you didn't know that the order was illegal, and that you were coerced to do that, to comply with the order. This law, what does, or what did, because it's no more a law, what this law did was to avoid evidence. There was no need to prove anything. So every military people, every military person, every police officer was believed to have acted in obediencia debida, superior order. So no evidence. So with these two laws, the trials stopped because first there was a final stop, no more trials, and the trials that were going on were pardoned, let's say, with this other law. So two laws to stop the trials. The Supreme Court said that this law was right, was valid. After this, we still had the people that were condemned and were in jail. So we stopped judging by these two laws, but we had some people that had already been condemned and were in jail at the moment. So the final tool that the country uses is the pardon, indulto, we call them. So this is for the people that were in jail, and some others too, they were totally pardoned. So in this way, nobody was liable anymore, because we had these three tools: the law of final point, let's say, here you have it, like a small summary, this act of punto final, or no more trials law, the act of obediencia debida, that means that superior order automatically justifies the conduct and there's no need for a trial, and the decrees by the president of indultos, of pardon. So in this way, no more trials and no more justice. Everything was stopped. This is the first point, a very tipping point, let's say. It's like a tipping point in our history. Because till now, we were through a process and we stopped judging. And there will be some years till the first following measure, that is in 1998, where we started changing the idea and we decided to repeal those acts. At this time, in 2001, there is a very important case in the Inter-American Court of Human Rights. I don't know if you have heard of it, Barrios Altos against Peru. This is a terrible execution of 15 people in Lima that were suspicious of belonging to a terrorist group, according to the country, according to the government. And this case was very, very important for the whole country and the whole continent too, because the court said no pardon, no law, no exoneration of guilt, there's no possibility for a human rights violator to be pardoned. There's no way a crime like this can be unpunished. And the court said this for this case in Peru, but Argentina took it as a doctrine, as case law. And we applied the case of Peru in our country. So we decided to start judging again all those cases that were pardoned, exonerated, stopped, or that maybe in some situations didn't even get to a process. All those situations, we started to go over them. So everything was discussed again. And we had two laws or acts that were very important. First, we admitted the non-applicability of statutory limitations to these kind of crimes. So we can judge them forever, let's say. The statutory limitations does not apply. And we gave a constitutional hierarchy to this convention that already existed. So that's number one, non-applicability of statutory limitations to crimes against humanity. Second, the laws of pardon that the presidency had used before was annulled, so no more valid. So in this way, we could start again. But we had to, and this is the important transitional justice concept, we were convinced that this was what we had to do. We had to remove every juridical obstacle to judge. We could not stop judging. We had to judge. We had to investigate crimes against humanity and judge, according to the Inter-American Court of Human Rights case law. And this came from laws, let's say, from the legislative powers, those laws that were annulled or made invalid. But from the Supreme Court also, we had 3 cases that confirmed what the legislative power had decided. These are the cases, Anacilia Clavere, Simon, and Maceo. Very interesting cases. I will not go into them, but if you are willing to know, I can tell you about them. But you can see the time, the period of time. 2003 was the decision about the non-applicability of the statutory limitations, and 2004, 5, and 7, the Supreme Court says, yes, we are in the same path. So legislative power and judicial power are on the same track. And after that, of course, we started judging. In every single case we used the case law of the Inter-American Human Rights Court. That is this one that I told you before, Barrios Altos versus Peru. What this case law says is that no amnesty, no application of the statute of limitations, no justification, no cause of exoneration of guilt is admissible when we are dealing with human rights, systematic and serious violations, or international crimes. So, as our situation was framed as crimes against humanity, we considered that this case law applied. And this is why we started to judge. At present, we have more than 1,000 cases at law. Here you can see the circle, what is in red is what is being investigated at the moment, but what is in green, light green, it is 273 cases that had sentences already. This is from 2 years ago. Now we are in more than 300 sentences. You can see in this other chart that the first one on the top is condemned people. So these are people that had received imprisonment, more than 1,000 people. The second number, 165, is people that have been acquitted, and 542 are being at this time at trial in different situations. The last one, 964, are the people that have died during the process. This is the condition in which these persons that are being tried for crimes against humanity now are. So the red, the vivid red, that is the people that are detained in custody, in prison. The yellow is the people that are dead, and the light orange, or something like that, is people that are free. I want to highlight this because it is heard or it is said sometimes that all people that were condemned or that were at trial were condemned, and those who were condemned are in prison even though they are 80 or 90 years old, and there's a big motion about humanitarian issues there. Well, this is not the case. This is false information. Many people, as you can see in this chart, are free. They are on the trial, but they are free. In the case where they are detained or with imprisonment, they can even fulfill that imprisonment at their houses, because our code allows that when you are over 17 or you have some illness or need, particular need. So here you can see that there are more free people, the ones in red, than detained people, the ones in light blue. And from the people detained, the people that are in imprisonment, the ones in red here are the ones that are at their homes. So it's not that we are not complying with humanitarian law as to people who need to be in their houses to be in prison, to fulfill the prison sentence. So this is the justice part. So first we judged, to make a very short summary, first we judged, like this famous trial, Argentina 1985, the movie. Then we pardoned, so we stopped judging, and then we judged all over again. That's the situation, let's say. So this is why sometimes we do not know whether to talk about transitional justice or not, because it was criminal justice, and maybe now we are, or in the middle we were in transitional justice, and now we are back to the criminal justice, but it's there's so much under the river, no? So much water. We have gone through so many measures. So is this transitional justice or not? This is a nice topic. Some of the authors, Catherine Sitting or Ruti Title, they talk about delayed transitional justice. No? But in Argentina, we do not talk of transitional justice. Nobody says we are doing or have done transitional justice. I have a course at the university that's called Transitional Justice, and they didn't accept it as such. So I had to go International Criminal Law and Transitional Justice, and I could go to it. But we do not accept that this is transitional justice. And in the world, we are the case of transitional justice. So you may call it as you want. This is the whole story. So nowadays, we can say that there's a second aspect of our history that for me is amazingly interesting. That is the memoria aspect. Not only we have the trials, which of course are the main reply for memoria requests, because if you get perpetrators to trial, of course they are telling about what happened, and testimonies of witnesses are very important, and memoria is done at the courtroom. Not only we have reparation of the victims, but we are also going or undergoing a very interesting, I don't know how long, but a very interesting recovery process, a recovery of remembrance sites. So we started looking for and finding every single center of detention along the whole country, all over the country, and we identify them, and we make we take some measures related to anthropology work, recovery of corpses that may be there, recovering sites that were destructed. So this is a very interesting topic in Argentina. The situation of the ESMA is one of the most important ones, because this was the school where the military were learning how to become military people, let's say. And the school was kept by the military after the dictatorship. And only in 2004, victims could recover the place, which is now a huge area where there are a lot of buildings that are used for different purposes in human rights. And in there, this is called the Space for Memory and Promotion and Defense of Human Rights, previews of former center or illegal center of detention, torture, and extermination. Within this big area, you have a lot of interesting things, but there are two museums. The Malvinas Museum and the museum where that's called Casino de Oficiales, where the people were actually detained and tortured. So these are pictures from the day we went together. I wanted to bring them back so that you may remember. This is the main stone that we have on the street before you enter the place, this museum, these sites of remembrance. And you can see many of them all over the city, because in every place where a person was kidnapped, there is a sign like this. This is the school where many students got to be military. There was no torture or detention here. This was the main school. And this is the huge area that I told you. All of this is called the ESMA, and all of this was recovered. But only the little one here, number 1, was the place of detention. So it was within the whole place, but at the end of it, on a corner. This is in the main capital city, in the middle of a very fancy neighborhood, very expensive neighborhood, very close to a stadium, a football stadium that's very well known. So that was important. The military people did what they did in the middle of the city, in this place and many others. And this is the place. This is where they were kept, where victims were kept. The building itself cannot be modified or touched because it is proof, it is evidence in the current and ongoing trials. So we cannot touch the building. That's why there is this big structure with the faces of the disappeared people or people that were held in the ESMA. But this is outside the ESMA. The families didn't accept to have the photos inside the ESMA. They wanted to have them outside. These are some of the aisles in there. You can see the state. It's not in a very good shape, but as I told you, we cannot touch the building. This is the last floor where people were kept. It's called capucha, which is hood. Hood is the black hood they had all the time, all day, day and night during detention there. This is an example of the area, the small area where a person was kept. He or she had to stay there. They couldn't move from there. They were lying down in this small place. This is another area that's called capuchita. It means little hood, because it was like the last area, last floor, where there's a lot of humidity there. It's a very claustrophobic place where some people were sent like in a second stage of torture, and then there are some other versions of the story. This is the place. The important thing of this place is that those windows that you see at the back are to the street. And right there is a school. So parents that went to school to take the kids or pick them up from school, they could perfectly see what was going on, or the people inside could see. During a period they were covered, but not all the time. This is the famous delivery room where more than 30 kids were born inside the ESMA, pregnant detainees. As I told you before, France was a very important country for us because they had this pressure, international pressure. You may remember that during our dictatorship, 1978, we had the first World Cup in Argentina. It was played in the country, and we won the cup. And this was during the dictatorship. So there was a lot of contradictory opinions in the world about that, and France was one of the main opponents. This is from the French press. This is also from the French press, so you can see the comparison. The second one is Videla, our commander. The first one you know. Going back to the ESMA, well, that is in the ESMA too, but going back to the structure, this is the famous basement. Everything happened here. They came here for the first time, they were tortured here, then they were sent to the upper levels or floors, and they were down again to this basement where victims or detainees were dragged and taken out along a staircase there to the parking lot, put into trucks and sent to the vuelos de la muerte. So now this ESMA, this place, that is just one. There were more than 500 in the whole country, for you to have an idea. 500 illegal centers of detention. This is only one. It was the main one, the most iconic, but there were many, many of them. And these are the numbers of trials nowadays. We have 4 mega causa. Mega causa is the name of a big trial, let's say, with many, many perpetrators indicted and many victims. So just in this place that I am showing you, that is one example of a center of detention, we have 800 witnesses that have declared and have given their testimony, more than 30 children born in custody, 51 perpetrators condemned for crimes committed just there, and 816 people included as victims. The real number is more than 3,000 victims from the ESMA. And there's another place of memoria too. I am giving you just two examples. This is one, the Museum of ESMA, that I don't know if you know that it has become by UNESCO Patrimonio de la Humanidad last year. And the second example is this park that is to remember the flight deaths. This is a very nice park in front of the river in Buenos Aires, where the people were thrown from the planes. And this is a place where we have many art objects and sculptures. This is Pablo Miguez, who is, there's a statue of him in the middle of the river, so you can see it's very impressive. It's shocking. Pablo Miguez was 14 years old when he was detained, and he was disappeared. And this is the famous monument that's called 30,000 for the number of the disappeared people in Argentina, and it's a structure made in black and white, and depending on where you are standing, you can see the person or not. So this is to show how a person can disappear and you just don't realize. If you move a little, you don't see him anymore. If you move to the right, for example, you see the face. So this is the important message of the monument, the concept of forced disappearance. So just to sum up, I tried to show you what we did after the facts, the justice method that we used. First, a justice or a criminal justice according to standards in criminal law. Then we stopped judging, and then we came back to judge. Coming back to this second period of judging was not easy. We needed a lot of political support, and a legal structure had to be made in order to judge after so many years of the commitment of the acts. But finally, we could judge, and we are still judging. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Natalia. I think that was a very comprehensive account. I know one could talk forever on the Argentinian case. It has so many different aspects, and of course, as you can see, it also moves through time. I think you very well demonstrated how things go up and down in a certain way in terms of accountability and victim focus over time. So the first period, the second, the third, and who knows what's happening now, because that's another chapter in Argentinian history, let's say. So I suggest we have a quick break, 5 minutes, and then let it digest, and then we can still move into some Q&A after the break. That'll be okay? Yeah? Good.